Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Horror Room. I am Travis Bruce, and today I have with us a special guest. He's an author, and he has a series of books that are called the Book of Ancient Series. And he has a new book that was just released a couple months ago. This is the second book in the series, and it's called The Book of Death and Madness. I have with us the author, John Hawes. John, welcome to the Horror Room.
Thank you very much. Nice to see you.
It's a pleasure having you on. So first, let's talk about their actual series, which is the Book of Ancient. Tell us a little bit about the overall series.
Yeah, it's the Book of Ancient Evil, and it's
Evil.
It's a trilogy so far. With it was inspired by a novella of mine that got published several years ago, and then when I was looking at a horror series to do, I decided that there was enough prequel stories to tell to this story that I went backwards and started at the beginning.
It's amazing. Now, was that hard to do, to kind of start with a concept and then start working your way backwards?
Yeah. The problem is that there were so many things that I stated as fact that I couldn't change my mind on them. Because in the future it was already a known commodity. I couldn't suddenly decide, oh no, he doesn't have a limp. He does have a limp, and I have to acknowledge that all the way through the series, as inconvenient as it was at times.
Now overall, as an author or as a writer, making a series, which is almost like making a universe, and you're turning the story into a universe. That has to be tough because, when you're just doing one book, you just probably got beginning, middle, end. But when you're doing a series, how do you determine when you're going to stop each book? Which parts of the universe and the story are going to be told?
Yeah, it was an interesting thing to do on two fronts. The first is that it's inspired by Lovecraft. So it's very much in the Lovecraft universe. So his monsters and his stuff that goes on. So there is stuff like that that's already established. And the other thing was that it is historical. It starts out in the late 1800s, and then the second book is a little bit after that, and then the third one is in the early 1900s. Yeah. So I kind of had an idea when I got started where it was going to end because I had this novella already written. So I knew what had come before, more or less, in broad strokes. And what I did was I decided, okay, so this one is going to be up to this point, and the second book is going to be from the end of that point to the right about the time when the novella starts, and then the third one is going to be just after the novella. So I kind of already had some markers set up for me ahead of time, which made it easier for deciding how long the book was going to be and where it was going to go to.
Amazing. Now, you're doing a book a little bit after the Lovecraft series. Now, how much was the inspiration just overall in your writing as a writer as the Lovecraft series been?
My horror definitely is. I read him when I was very young, and a friend of mine is such a huge fan of it, of his books, that he was always after me. He's like, oh, write a Lovecraft story. So I finally did, which was the novella, which helped become more than just a novella.
Now, okay, so I have a lot of new authors that actually will watch my show, or individuals who are thinking about becoming authors. When it comes to writing a story, because it's hard for a lot of people to write that full-length feature book.
Yeah.
Did you recommend them to start with a novella and start adding on from there?
Oh, I suggest you start with a short story.
Okay.
Yeah, way back when I was just out of high school, I decided I was going to be a writer, and I decided I was going to start with a book. And so I spent the better part of a year working on this book, and then in the end, I was learning my craft. I was learning how to put sentences together, and in the end, I had to abandon it because it wasn't it wasn't good enough to get published. Now, that's pretty heartbreaking when you spend a year on it. You don't want to drop something after a year. But if you're learning your craft on short stories and you've spent 2 weeks making a short story, it's not so heartbreaking to abandon it. So anybody who asks me, I always say, start with a short story.
And add from there.
Exactly. The novella that I made was not only to make my friend happy, but it was also the kind of no man's land between short stories and novels. I wanted to do something that was a bit longer to get the idea of the pacing for something that was longer, the editing for something that was longer, before going back to trying a book.
Okay. Now, you're already actually your third book in the series.
Yeah.
We're looking to release that this year?
The third book in the series comes out in October, yeah.
Okay. Now, so tell us a little bit about the third book. And
the third book comes just after the novella that I was telling you about. Mm-hmm. And it is in the early 1900s, just after when the Titanic almost crossed the ocean. So that and Jack the Ripper and so many other little historical things play a part in all of the stories.
Now, John, you seem like a big history buff like myself.
I wasn't, but I am now.
Really? You're now? Okay, I'm going to say, because like to go back and put these little pieces in, like the Titanic, I feel like you have to do a lot of research to make sure everything adds up.
A lot. I wanted to make sure it was historically accurate. But it's historical horror, so certain things never happened outside of my story, but certain things did happen, and I had to make sure that they were correct. In the first book, they're in India in 1878, and the amount of history that's actually been documented is a little less from that period than from when they're in the 1880s in London, England. So there's a lot more documentation for that I had to go and look, and I could look at street maps from that time, and I could actually go, oh, okay, so they would be able to turn left onto this street and follow this, and then in the 1910s in New York City, where the third one starts out, there's a lot more documentation for that.
Yeah, because I'm a huge. Most people don't know about me. I spend more time watching documentaries and history stuff than I would say the same amount as I do horror. So like I'm a huge history buff, and one of the things, like, even I go to a new state, is I start looking for like historical things to go see.
Yeah. I quite enjoy history. It was never my best subject in school, but I found the joy in it from doing the research for my books.
And there's a lot of horror aspects that you can add in to the books, which appreciate you that can tie in.
Yeah.
Because history has a lot of horror to it, man.
There really is.
Yes.
There really is. There's horror and there's horrible. And they're so close to each other.
Now, John, you're a horror author. Now, right now in the year 2024, I think this might be one of the best times to be a writer right now, because I mean, with self-publishing, there's small presses, and it seems like the audience is overall excited to read indie horror. What are some positives that you see right now writing yourself as a writer? Also, let's shoot over to the second part and like, what are some negatives?
Well, the positives I find is that there's a lot of different ways that you can self-publish yourself. There's also a lot of smaller publishers. Like, you don't have to go with the big 3 or big 5 or whatever it is. There's a lot of very competent, credible publishers out there who are willing to take a chance on new authors, or authors who've got limited amount of publications out there, which is nice. This trilogy that we're talking about is published by Wordfire Press, which is the publishing company of Kevin J. Anderson. And I met him when I was in LA, and he agreed to publish these works for me, which was fantastic. And it's great to work with them as a publisher, but they're not like oh my gosh, Doubleday, or I'm trying to think of the big publishers that are out there. Yeah, amazing people to work with. So so that's some of the positives. And some of the negatives is I think there's still that stigma to small publishing and self-publishing from writers, and they'll look and they'll go, oh, well, I've never heard of that before. Never heard of that publisher. I've never heard of that writer. And so you don't necessarily get judged by the cover, but sometimes you get judged before the person even picks your book up.
Now, do you think as a writer you get judged more by other writers, or do you think you get judged more by readers?
Well, I think you get judged differently. I know I certainly judge. Now that I'm a writer, I find that I judge a book differently. I'll read the book and I will get to a certain point and I'll be like, nope, it's not for me. But now I can judge it as, oh, the book, I'm not this book's target audience, or this person's writing style is not to my tastes. Whereas when I was just a reader, it was just like, oh, I don't like this book. Toss it aside, give it a bad review. Now I don't. I don't give bad reviews. I don't. If I didn't like the book, I'm just like, that's fine. It's somebody else's dream. I'm moving on. Next book.
But and I'm the same way. I mean, up till the point where I started doing this show and started interviewing authors, I would read a book, and because I would go to a lot of horror conventions, I still go to a lot of horror conventions, and there's a lot of indie horror authors. They have their booths set up at horror conventions, and I try to purchase as a couple books at each one, and I sit home and read them. But before I started really interviewing authors and understanding the process, I would be like, wow, this is a piece of crap, and blah blah blah, blah, and make like a bad review or something. And now I'm like, no, this is not a piece of crap. It's just not for me. Or this might be this person's first book, or something like that. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, you just don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll pick up a book and I'll be like, oh, there's a lot of typos in here.
Yeah.
And then I go and I look them up and I'm like, oh, it's your only book out there. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll see what your next one's like.
Because I didn't know, before I started doing the show, I didn't know that a lot of self-published, not a lot, but some self-published authors don't get an editor. You know what I mean? They edit it themselves. And so I didn't know that.
Yeah. I do my first edit, and then I've got a group of people, some who are writers and some who are not, who go through all my stuff. And then in the case of this book, it went to an actual publisher who had two editors look through it, which thankfully one editor was all about the choice of words and punctuation and grammar and style. And then the second one was all about being historically accurate.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, in that first book, I had my main character. He used the word okay, and he said, "Well, actually, okay wasn't a word until around or about the 1900s. Your book is in the late 1800s. It wouldn't have actually been a word." And I was like, "Oh, nuts! I gotta find a word to say okay now." Yeah. So I had to go through the whole book, and I took it in context. I was like, okay, so here he's going to say, yeah, right, or something to that effect. So it was an interesting thing to learn.
Who would know that? I didn't know that. Yeah,
I had no idea. That and electric elevators were not. In India, anyway, were not until after the time of my story. So my elevator was originally electric, and then I had to fiddle with that and make it into more of a mechanical thing than what I originally had. So just have to adapt.
It's good to have an editor, right?
It is. It is. And all those little things like, oh, I don't think you meant that word. I think you meant this word. I'm like, oh, you're right. I did.
And it's all about having a second pair of eyes on. Like,
absolutely.
I kind of wish I had a second pair of eyes sometimes, because sometimes even like my YouTube channel, I am, I'm trying to edit all these videos on, and then I get them up, and then I got to put them up on YouTube, and I got to put the description in. Sometimes I will misspell or forget to put an S in the title or something. And when it comes to YouTube, once you post something and it goes live, you can go back and change it, but people don't see the change until they actually click on the video. So, and it kind of screws up the whole entire, most people don't care. Most people don't care.
Yeah.
But,
you're always going to have someone.
Yeah, but it's always like, it would be nice to have a second pair of eyes just on that part, making sure I'm spelling everybody's name correctly. But, when you're a one-man show, it's kind of tough to do sometimes.
I just watched my son. He's in a literary arts program in high school. He's graduating this year, and for his final thing, he did this horror short, and he filmed it and everything, and it was amazing. And I saw how much work went into something that was 6 minutes long.
Mm-hmm.
Incredible.
Yep. It's a lot.
Yeah. It's a lot more. Same as a book. I mean, it might take a person a few hours to read a book, but it took that writer months between the writing and the editing and the research and everything.
I totally agree, man. I totally agree. Now, I'm gonna shoot you a question to something you brought up. You brought up about reviews. Have you ever gotten a review? Like, what's the one review that you've gotten from one of your books that sticks on your mind? It could be for good or worse or bad. What's a review that you're like, I will always remember that review?
Yeah. So the novella I told you about, it was part of an anthology. It did quite well, and there's one person who reviewed it and said, well, this anthology, and they just shredded all the other stories. And he said, now, the exception is that John has, and this guy can write. And I'm like, oh my God, amazing. And then he said, it's too bad that while doing the Lovecraft story, he also embraced the, how did he word it? He embraced the racism of the time. And I was like, I did? And so I went back and I looked, and I was like, okay, I had a secondary character to my main character, and I originally included him because I wanted my character to be talking to somebody. Mm-hmm. So the secondary character was an Indian character, and they'd been together for years. They'd been friends for years. And the person took offense at the Indian character being a secondary character in late 1800s. And most of the characters in the story were white. I mean, they were on a cruise ship in the 1800s and sign of the times and all that. But I took that to heart. And in the when I went back and I did the prequel and I showed how these two characters originally met each other, I kept that in mind. I was like, yes, okay. This is colonialism at its worst in India. This is some of the worst periods for the Indian people. And I made it so that my main character was a little more sympathetic towards the plight of the actual people who lived there when the colonizers came, and the friendship that he and this young boy at the time came to have, and how he learned as much from him about the Indian culture as the Indian kid learned from my main character, Shaw, about English culture. Mm-hmm. So that's the review that sticks in my mind all the time, and I'm always thinking, you can do better.
I mean that's a great review. It's probably as a writer, probably something you don't want to hear, but I mean, it made you think,
Yep.
and that's those, and that's something even like what I try to do with if I'm gonna do a criticism or say something, it's gonna be constructive criticism. It's not gonna be something like, oh, this book stinks or something like that. Yeah. I'm not going to do that, or even just put 1 star and just leave it at that. Yeah. I'm just going to. By the way, I've never given a book a 1 star. I don't know who is in my books a 1 star, but I at least say, hey, these are some things that I liked about it, and these are some things that I didn't like about it.
I am always happy to hear constructive criticism.
Yes.
Yeah, that's how I get better.
Exactly.
When you stop listening to the criticism, when you think you're so good, you're too big, you stop growing.
I agree. Because you always have to constantly try to, I don't care what you do, you always have to constantly try to reinvent yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't, like, let's say one day I become like the biggest thing in the world. I don't want to go like this and then and stay here. I want to keep going. I want to keep getting better. I want, like, 20 years from now, I want people to be like, oh yeah, I read his old stuff, but his new stuff's great.
Yes. Because you don't want to be that guy where people say, oh my goodness, he's okay, but his old stuff is the best.
Like, he used to be so good.
I know, he used to be edgy, yeah.
What happened?
All right, John. So as you know, this is a horror channel. So I'm going to ask you 3 random horror questions. Are you ready? All right.
Ready.
The first one. Out of the big 3, horror villains, that's Freddy, Michael Myers, and Jason. Which one is your least favorite and why?
Freddy. Out of those 3, I guess Freddy is, because I always found it was just he's a little too overpowered. Like, how do you keep away from somebody who can come and get you in your dreams? You have to sleep eventually. And they're all the slasher kind of villains. And I don't know. I like Jason because he was like the first one that I saw. And Michael Myers, he was like a step up, I thought. Jamie Lee Curtis gave it a little bit of class, and Donald Pleasance. Freddy, like, I love Robert Englund, and I think he does a great job, but if I had to pick one of the 3, I would pick Freddy to be my least favorite.
Interesting.
But he's also the one I would want to run into the least.
Yes, because, I mean, listen, somebody kill you in your fucking sleep, then that's terrifying. That's terrifying, because I would be dead, like, quick, because I doze off all the time. Yeah. Especially, as soon as I hit my 40s, I realize, like, I just start dozing off for, like, I don't even know I'm asleep half the time.
Yep. I'll be watching a movie with my kids. Yep. I'm like, out, I'm back. It's like been 3 minutes. Nobody even realized. I'm like, okay.
And you'd be dead. You'd be gone.
I'd be dead. Jason and Michael, I just jump in a car and I drive, 3 provinces over.
Yeah.
Good luck walking.
But Jason, well, here's the thing. Jason, you just don't go to that camp. That's all you gotta do. That's how you avoid Jason. And Michael Myers, just don't go to that town.
Yeah.
You can avoid Michael Myers.
Yeah.
Sleeping? Yeah. I mean, that's
what are you gonna do?
That's you're fucked.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
Good question.
Exactly. Thank you. Second question. What is a horror movie that you think that the sequel was better than the original?
Ooh, that's a good question. Man, I usually like the first one the best. Maybe the Halloween one, Halloween 2.
You like part 2 better than the original?
Yeah, maybe. Just a little. I just like the idea that at the end of that first movie, they look over the balcony and Michael Myers is on the grass, and that was going to be the end. And then the director told Jamie Lee Curtis, "It's like, no, go look again." And she looks over and he's gone, and that's what made it into the movie. And then there's the next one, and it same night, isn't it? Just
same night, and he's more vicious than in the first one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The second Friday the 13th was quite good because, like, the first one is not Jason at all. He's just the motivation.
If anybody asked me that question, like, if somebody asked me that same question, it's just automatic Friday the 13th. Like, it just pops on my brain Friday the 13th.
No.
I've never been a fan of the original. I've been to the actual Camp Crystal Lake in New Jersey, took a tour of it and everything, and I've never been a fan. It seems like the more and more I watch that movie over the years, the least I like it.
Yeah.
It's a hard to watch movie. It's kind of boring. It's definitely part two, you kind of get introduced to a killer, a face, you know what I mean? But the first one is kind of like a murder mystery. You don't know who the killer is.
Yeah, very true. Very true. Oh, I know one. Hellraiser. The first one's okay.
Yeah,
but it's kind of like introducing you to the universe and the whole idea, and it's a little slow. But Hellraiser 2, it's like, Pinhead really comes into who he is, and he gets a lot more screen time.
I agree with you. I think I actually might like part 2 better than the original. I'm sitting there thinking about it. I might actually like part 2 better. That's a good one.
I think I might have to watch them both.
Yes, I'm going to have to watch them again. It's been years.
Yeah, it has.
I love Pinhead. Pinhead is one of my favorite horror characters.
Yeah.
Cenobites, great horror characters.
Amazing, yeah.
Yes. The final question.
All right, ready.
What do you feel like is the most overrated horror movie? Like the one horror movie that everybody says is such the greatest thing ever, and you're like, I don't see it.
Wow. I know there's one out there, but it's... Huh. All I can think of is all the ones I like. Shoot. Well, I don't know. You know the movie Poltergeist? The first one? It's good, but like technically, it's awful. Like there's a scene right in the beginning in Carol Ann's room where they're coming up, and you see a person who walks past the door, but that's a crew member, and they come in and there's nobody in that room, and it's just a technical error. And there's a whole bunch of those in the movie, and I think that's a good example of one that I liked when I was young. And now when I watched it so many years later, and I'm like, oh.
Yes.
Yeah. So that one, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah. I may come back to that. Something else may pop into my head.
See, I mean, my go-to has always, it's always Terrifier. Like, I don't understand why people like that movie. Like, that's like the movie that I hear people talk about it so much, and I'm not going to finally watch it, and I'm like, okay, this is a great horror character. Art the Clown's a great horror character, but I don't understand what the fuss is about. You know what I mean? I'm just curious. I'm like,
visually, very interesting character.
Yes.
Like when I had seen him here and there and here and there all over the place, and I was like, oh my God, he is a terrifying looking character.
Mm-hmm.
And the movie was okay.
It was just okay. And wasn't nothing. I don't understand. Yeah. I don't understand the rant and rave about it. They're okay movies. They're okay movies. They're not great to me. But yeah.
I think my thing is that I tend to delete the ones that I didn't like, and I just forget about them.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of another movie. I think. I already said the original Friday the 13th. That one, people watch that every Friday the 13th. Like, it's like, for horror fans, it's like an iconic thing to do, is watch it. And it's such a bad movie. I mean, it's definitely a direct knockoff off of 1979 Halloween. Directly a knockoff of it. And it's such a bad movie. But it's, it's iconic. It's an iconic horror movie. So it starts the story of probably one of the most iconic horror characters, if not characters in movie in general.
Yeah.
So
and because they've got because there's a special day of the year or days, everybody watches it. But Halloween with Michael Myers too, you get the same kind of idea.
Mm-hmm.
Freddy, he doesn't have a special day for him.
He does not. He does not. He does not. All right, John.
Yeah.
Where can everyone find you, my friend?
I am available on Amazon, so you can always find me on there. You can go to my website, johnhas.ca. Nice, easy one to remember. I am Canadian, so I'm a .ca, not a .com. The .com is owned by a different John Has, and he writes religious fiction. That's not me. Don't get confused.
Completely different.
If you read the two different kind of stuff, you'd be like, I don't get it. This guy must be out of his mind. You can also order my stuff through Barnes & Noble or Chapters if you're here in Canada. And I'm slowly getting available in more and more places.
Awesome. John, this was a blast having you on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. And when the next book comes on, I would love to have you come back on and we can talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. More. October 1st it gets released. So
okay, well, let's have you down in October in the Halloween season.
Yes. We can talk more about movies. I'll have an answer to the one I don't like by that point.
Okay. And I'm gonna give you a question right now. I want you to write it down and I'll ask you this question then. And the question is going to be, what horror villain do you feel like you relate to the most? I'm not saying you're out there killing people, but who do you feel like you relate to?
Ooh. Is this to answer for next time, or you want it now?
For next time.
For next time.
Write it down. Yeah, write it down and think about it.
I'll do my homework.
Yes.
I bet you there's one.
Everybody has. I mean, if you really think about it, there's someone. Yes, I have mine too. So I have where I'm like,
who's yours?
I would say Michael Myers. Myers.
Okay.
I mean, everybody has kind of, even if everybody has had that dysfunctional family. You know what I mean? You grew up in that dysfunctional family. It might not even be to that fucking level, but everybody has had a sibling that they can't stand or a parent they can't stand, and their parents have a divorce and they got a fucking father or mother that you fucking hate or something. Like everybody has dealt with some of those aspects before. So like, now you necessarily don't kill those people, but like you think about it.
Yeah. It's a movie like Halloween. You can get that catharsis thing. It's like, oh, I don't have to kill them because Michael Myers took care of that feeling for me.
Exactly. So like, I understand what Michael Myers went through, and listen, I don't understand killing people, but I understand like those aspects as growing up as a child. Yep.
Okay, I'll buy that. Okay, I will definitely have an answer for that one.
Sounds good, John. All right, everybody. Thank you for coming to the Horror Room. I'm Travis Bruce, and that's John Halls. See you next time. Take care.
Bye, everyone.